All right, welcome in, everybody. It's 6:53 on our Wednesday afternoon/evening. We are breaking into coverage right now for a new tornado warning polygon that has been issued for parts of southern Monroe, northern Livingston, and western Ontario counties. This is different from what we have been doing all day long here this afternoon. This is not a damaging straight-line wind event. This is a potential to have a tornado on the ground right now. This is our cell that is passing judgment here with the warning polygon. I want to do a couple of things right off the top here. Often, a lot of folks tune in with this and obviously get concerned. Is this my part of the world? Is this my town or my neighborhood? While this does include Monroe County, it does not include most of Monroe County. If you are watching us in Rochester right now, you are not under any warnings at all. There is no threat of a tornado in and around Rochester. This storm right in here is straddling the county line. This is near the Churchville area, which is right on the Monroe and Livingston County border. Even in Henrietta, you are okay. Now, if you've got some friends and family just south of Henrietta, again, closer to that county line, they may not be okay. The procedure with this, you need to go ahead and get into the lowest level of wherever you've got. If that's your house, if that's your apartment. You want to go low and you want to find an interior location. If you've got a basement or a storm shelter, that is the best thing you can possibly do out of all of this, but many of you may not have that. Interior spot away from windows. The rule of thumb out of this, you want to put as many walls between you and that possible tornado as you can. All right, so now that we've done that spiel, let's take a look at what this is doing here. We're going to take a few zoom ins and try to track to street level exactly where this possible tornado would be. The best way to do this is typically into something we call velocity scope. This is radar's way of being able to tell us not only where it is raining the heaviest, but where the air is probably twisting and spinning, and if we're going to have a tornado, where that particular spot would end up being. The warning itself calls out the Scottsville area in particular, and I would put this, and I'm looking at honestly a very muddied signature here. This is not a clear-cut look at a very likely tornado on the ground. This is radar indicated, and we don't need your help, by the way. Don't be going outside trying to take pictures and video of this. But rather, this is a murky signature of what I would call fairly weak rotation in here, but enough that this storm could be in the process of perhaps producing a tornado. That's I-90. That's our yellow line right in there. Center of circulation would likely be just to the east of Wheatland, but again, even there, it's very difficult for me to be able to pick this up with this shot. This is not the same kind of setup for folks who are in Oklahoma or Kansas, where everybody, whether you have a weather background or not, is able to kind of pick this up. But this is roughly where I would put this right now. So there's Scottsville. If we've got the tornado, it's going to be somewhere right about in here. This is 251, which is running left to right on your screen. This is 390, obviously the heavier traveled spot here. If we've got a tornado on the ground, it's going to be somewhere right about in here. Now, the important part you got to remember with radar is looking backwards. These only update every 4 to 5 minutes. So if the tornado on radar looks like it is right here, chances are it's closer to here. You do not want to be driving on 390 right now anywhere in southern Monroe County or close to that county line where you start to get into Livingston. We'd be looking at you for folks who are maybe headed home going to Rush, for example. Don't be on 390 right now. This is not a drive that you want to be able to have to make here, just with how messy this particular signature is. I'm going to clear this off the map, and we're going to do a couple of things here to kind of make life easier. We'll stop the motion of this radar, and I'm going to zoom this back out. We'll try to throw a storm track on this. We're going to get as many towns and communities on this as we possibly can. So let me go ahead and zoom out a bit. We'll continue to back this up as much as we can. The actual warning itself ends up going all the way into Ontario County. So folks in Victor, for example, you need to be in your safe place right now. Right along 20 as you get into Ontario County, you need to be in your safe place. These polygons go out in time and space, and they get bigger just because we've got to figure out exactly where that possible tornado is going. So let's put the storm track on this. We'll head into our severe weather mode. We're going to look for our cone drawing tool here. And right where our tornado would be, which is right about in there, we'll pop this out farther off to the east, storm moving at roughly 30 miles an hour or so. 7:01, we're looking at Meadowood. Now, we're at 6:58 right now, so you've got about 3 to 4 minutes tops in Meadowood to go ahead and get into your safe spot. You don't have time to be debating. You don't have time to be figuring out where I'm going to go. Go and do it. Basement, storm shelter, interior location, lowest spot that you've got in your home or apartment. We'll be looking on the west side of Rush by about 7:03. 7:09 toward the downtown Rush area. Honeyway Falls, you're involved by about 7:15. Bigger towns on here, there's Mendon, by 7:24. There is Victor by 7:34. Now, admittedly, once we go farther out with these, because this is not the middle of Tornado Alley, very often these storms, they cycle up and they cycle down very fast. They do not lend themselves to being long-track, long-duration tornado warnings. Now, you will see places like Farmington and Canandaigua and Manchester on this list of town names here. And yes, admittedly, there's a chance you do need to be paying attention to this, but we got to take this one step at a time and make sure this storm is either holding together for that long or not holding together for that long, and that's certainly going to be the biggest thing out of this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take a quick step back off. We're going to keep the town names on this map. I've got a computer back here in the Weather Center that is in contact continually with the National Weather Service out of Buffalo. Now, these are the folks that are actually issuing these warnings, and we get to go back and forth to see if they're offering any additional insight on this. The latest that they've got, and the latest update was when we about broke on with this at 6:50, was the tornado was located again near Scottsville, or 7 miles south of Chili, moving east at about 30 miles an hour. So we're a little bit west, or excuse me, a little bit east of Churchville right now, as you see some of those town names showing up on that map. They have not offered any additional updates or insight out of any of this. So I'll step back on. We're going to clear all of this out of here and kind of go back to the home view and give you a big picture perspective of the whole situation of what's going on. So we'll go back to home. We have only one active tornado warning here, folks. This is not affecting the vast majority of the viewing area. A little teeny tiny kind of a setup here. We'll clear our storm track off the map. Rochester, you remain safe, even though we have another strong storm with a severe thunderstorm warning just west of you. That is right along the Orleans and Genesee County line. But our chief issue right now continues to be that possible tornado warning right on the county line from Livingston toward Monroe. We'll go back and do a deep dive with this, and we'll be allowed to kind of zoom in as close as we want. And all I'm looking to avoid here, we don't want to see any semblance of a hook or an appendage. You ever hear that when you were going to school, the term hook echo? You know, a lot of times you deal with that in Tornado Alley into the plains areas. That's what you're looking at right about in here. It's not overly pronounced, but it is certainly there. That little bit of an appendage, to me, is very likely where we've got that possible tornado, should we actually have one. And again, this is debatable at this point. It's a signature that radar is telling us there's enough spin, but we have yet to see any confirmed reports. We have no reports of damage out of any of this. All we're looking at are hypotheticals, but enough that you need to pay attention to it. There's Meadowood, there's West Rush, North Rush, and then the downtown Rush area right in there. And that is jumping right over 390 at this point. So if we do have a tornado on the ground, it is very likely going to be very near 390, at least at this juncture. So you're about 5 miles away from where we had that original issuing of the warning. So storm moving off to the east at about 30 miles an hour. I'm going to go back into the severe mode with this, and we're going to throw velocity again on it and see if we can't see anything slightly clearer or slightly different from that last scope. And there you go. All right, so here's what I'm looking at right in there, just north of where you see the text West Rush. You can see it with me here. This little spot right in here, this is what we call a weak couplet. That brighter red showing up right in there is a little bit of twisting and turning of the air in here. It's not overwhelming, folks. I would be standing up here with a much different tone if I was exceptionally confident that we had a significant tornado on the ground here. But what we've got is a storm that is more than capable of putting a tornado down, but we are not quite at that point where everything is just jumping off the page. But if I had to put it somewhere, that to me is highly likely where your possible tornado is right now. If we've got something on the ground, that's about where it's going to be, and it is not that far at all from 390. It looks like that's East River Road there. I'm going to get rid of that little drawing that I showed you here so we can put up some more of these road names. East River Road right about in there, possible tornado. There's Meadowood, there's the Gola area, and that is 390. So that tornado is going to be jumping across 390 here at any moment. And that's what we've got with this big bad storm. Still not quite seeing any new updates coming in, at least not from the National Weather Service yet, but I am going to be interested to see if they go ahead and up the wording on this a little bit, just because of the fact that that rotation is looking a little bit more pronounced. We'll take this farther off to the east. Note the comma head looking structure right about in there. So this is your problem area here. That new scan showing us that tornado right about in there, right over 390. Rush and Rochester Junction, that is 15A. This is Honeoye Falls. all of you need to be in your safe spot right now. The reflectivity signature of this is still stout enough here that it's jumping out sufficiently that this is one that we do have to act with. And honestly, it's one we don't get a whole lot of here in Western New York. We are not acclimated to seeing a whole ton of tornado warnings, but it's a good chance, if nothing else, to kind of practice what we need to do with this and make sure you know where to go and what you are going to end up doing. Back this back up. We'll take the entire duration of the scope of this polygon. I'll tell you now, we can trim this back part off here off to the west. You're done. A tornado threat from this particular storm in the Churchville area. So if you were in your safe spot, you're safe now. Go ahead and get out of there. You're good to go. You don't need to ride this out anymore. It often takes them a little bit of time to be able to go back and kind of trim that out. They're worried about a lot of things going on versus having to redraw those. Your storm track cone on the new possible track of where this tornado is, we'll take this out again eastward at 30 miles an hour. There's West Rush at 7:05, so you're looking at about a minute or two from now. Sibleyville by 7:13. Honeoye Falls, you were involved by 7:16. West Bloomfield by 7:23, and now we start getting into Victor by 7:34 and 7:37. Again, all of this pending this actual storm holds together and is not collapsing, that we don't see the rotation weakening or anything like that. I do want to take a quick moment here. I want to pan off to the west a little bit because we do have another storm that has a warning with it. It's just not a tornado warning, but now that we know the environment is certainly capable of a little bit of spin, we're going to need to keep an eye on this guy too. And again, this is going to be another Monroe County affair in southwest parts of the county. Right now it is in Geneva. This severe thunderstorm is very near the Byron area. That's your core of damaging wind gusts and perhaps a little bit of hail that is going to slide eastward. Again, look at who is in line with this. That's Churchville again. Now you and I will look at this together. We have yet to scope this, but we'll see what we see. We'll throw the scope on the center of this. And I don't see a whole lot. I see a lot of broad rotation in here, but I don't see anything that makes me nervous. So that's good. You still want to take action with this one because it is an actual warning, and you might have some damaging wind gusts and some hail out of that. But at least for the time being, that one does not stand out to me as being a big problem maker. So we still have our main game in town here, so we'll continue to follow this. Storm does not look a whole lot different at this new scan here at about 7:08. Your area of circulation right about in there. This is a mess, by the way. There's a lot of heavy rain falling right now in Honeoye Falls all the way toward Mendon. But we got to go back here into our velocity scan and see what we're looking at. We'll go back into our scope here. And with that new scan coming in, hopefully we've got a little bit of a better picture of what we're looking at. And we do. Still have some weak rotation in there. Let me do some better zooming here and centering so we can get this back in the center of your screen. There we go. We'll take that back off here. So if we got a tornado in here, I would put it right about in here. It has now jumped 390. Honeoye Falls, that is 15A. This is 251, which is going to take you right into Mendon. If we've got something in there, right about there, this is going to continue eastward in this general direction. So I think it's going to follow either parallel or just slightly south of 251 as you get into Mendon. Honeoye Falls, you need to be in your safe place right now. You have run out of time with this. You've got no more than a minute or two. We're going to cross our fingers that this storm is doing what many do, which is spin a little bit, but it's not spinning enough to put a tornado on the ground. Most storms, that is the way it ends in their life cycle. We don't know whether this is going to follow that path or not, and you don't know that in Honeoye Falls. So you need to be in your basement or your center location right now. We're going to ride this out with you, give it maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then this storm will end up being gone. It looks like they have redrawn the polygon out of this from the National Weather Service office. So we'll stop all motion. Let me clear out that velocity scope. And they did. So this is your new warning. Let me back this up just for my own sanity so I can get as good of a picture on this as I possibly can. We'll continue to back this up. The drawing of this new polygon now, I want to say it looks like they have trimmed out a good amount of Monroe County with this, and they have also tracked it slightly more south. The orientation of this storm is no longer pushing due east, but more of a southeast component to this. So we're still including northern Livingston County, we're still including western Ontario County, and we still have this guy, which has some rotation but nothing significant, that continues to bear watching. But all of this action remains well south of Rochester. We have no active severe weather concern or imminent threat in Rochester right now. And there you go with a brand new severe thunderstorm warning. That's for this guy right here. So they've elected to say this one is not spinning enough for a tornado. We're just going to keep the severe on that one, but it is moving about over the same area. So folks who have just maybe come out of your safe place around Churchville, for example, maybe you want to go back in there just because we got some more strong winds and some additional hail that will be sliding their way on in here. And that's not uncommon, by the way, for these storms in a setup like this to track and train over the exact same areas one after another. New scan coming in here. I don't see nearly as much of a hook on this. We still have a bit. There's still some clear rotational kind of signature in this. This is what we call our reflectivity scope, but I would venture to speculate that this is not quite as pronounced as it was a few scans ago. So that is fantastic news there. Back to our velocity, and this is honestly, folks, if you haven't seen tornado coverage, this is a tool that is probably the best thing that we've got in our toolbox. This is going to be the one thing that is going to be able to show us where that tornado is going to end up very likely being. Just looking at those bright colors on the normal radar that you see maybe from a weather app, you've got it on your phone, you've got it on your computer, that does not tell very much of the story. And we would put that area of spin in circulation. That is still it right there, 15A. That is Rush. It is just on the south side of Rush at this point. But it is, and has been, at least in my opinion still, a rather murky signature, which is what we want. We don't want to have some kind of stout area of rotation that really makes us nervous. Now we're getting really tight in here, and you're going to see some roadways. Again, we've got Sibleyville right in here. We're really in the rural spot of the world here, but you know, we've got some folks right in there near 15A. If you are familiar with this area, this is where that possible tornado is as it continues to push its way off to the east. I heard the pinging here of our computer. I'll take a quick walk over here with the National Weather Service chat, see what kind of updates they have provided. 2 minutes ago, they issued that severe thunderstorm warning for Genesee, Livingston, Monroe, and Ontario. And our latest update on the tornado warning, that tornado was located over Honeoye Falls, or about 10 miles south of East Rochester, now moving east at 45 miles an hour. So the storm has sped up a little bit. We still have that center of rotation very near the Sibleyville area that is just west of Rochester Junction, and very near Honeoye Falls, too. So all of that syncs up, and you see we got a new scan in there, so we'll slide this farther back off to the east. Hang on tight. We'll pull this into a little bit of a better view, and we'll throw that off the map. So there you go. I'll tell you what, there's a few signs that I'm seeing that hopefully this storm is starting to weaken a little bit. Wouldn't that be nice? So that's what we've got. That's your latest scan coming in. The latest warning has that circulation over Honeoye Falls right over 65. But it has not intensified any. It has not tightened up. It has not become any more significant, but it still exists, and we still have a tornado warning. So you in Mendon, you in Tomlinson Corners, you need to be in your safe place right now. We'll just ride this out for 10 minutes or so. This is not going to be that big, that scary of a situation. A lot of folks, they get really panicked over tornado warnings with this. This does not appear to me to be an imminent, massive problem on the ground right now, but one that you do need to take seriously because that storm does have some rotation in it. It does have some spin, and it is nearing the county line here as we finally start to pull this off to the east, thankfully, and hopefully we can put this whole situation to bed. I'm going to take a step back here, and we're going to do a real quick tour again. We're going to recap what's going on. It's 7:12 right now. I'm Chief Meteorologist Eric Snitil. You are tuned in live with us as we've broken into programming for an active tornado warning, which is now getting into southeast Monroe County, but almost exclusively here shortly, becoming a northwest Ontario County affair. That red polygon is the tornado warning. What you have in orange, these are severe thunderstorm warnings that continue. This storm near Riga, for example, still capable of damaging wind gusts and maybe some small hail. The city of Churchville, you were just under a tornado warning, and now you're having to deal with this. So we are back to being in an active weather mode there. Riga, we're looking at you too. In and around Rochester, you have no worries out of this. You've got the warning that gets you to about the north side of Henrietta. It crosses over a line from Mortimer to Pittsford, and that's about it. Damaging wind gusts, and that's what we've got with that one. So if you're north of that, if you're in downtown, if you're northward toward the lake, you have no problems, you have no issues. Now, I'm going to tell you a few thoughts and observations as I see this from a guy who has been involved with many, many tornado warnings off in the deep south, off in Alabama. There's a few tools of the trade and a few tricks that you learn with this to be able to assess what this storm is doing kind of in real time. And that's the mode that we're in. We don't have computer models that tell us whether this tornado is going to strengthen our weekend. Let's just pop your head out the window and see what you see, which for me in this studio means I'm on radar trying to see what radar is helping me see, which is only so good, obviously, than being able to have somebody in a vehicle looking at this thing with eyes on it. These are lightning strikes that have now gone from white to yellow. What does that mean? Our software here, when the lightning strike shows up in white, that means it has happened within the last minute or two. When it turns yellow, when it turns orange, those are old lightning strikes that are dying out. You are not seeing nearly as many lightning strikes in this storm as it continues to push its way off to the east. What does that mean? To me, this is a sign that this storm is probably undergoing some weakening, and it would make some sense because the sun is going down, and this part of the world has already dealt with multiple rounds of rain and storms through the course of the afternoon. The second thing that I noticed, and maybe you do too, look at how much brighter and stronger looking this was before it jumped over 390. It is not the same looking storm as it was about 15 or 20 minutes ago. And that's normal. That is common. That is exactly what we want to see out of this, where you just really don't have the setup here tonight for these to be producing any kind of significant rotation or any kind of significant tornado threat. That's not the deal that we have right now. Very little wind shear in the atmosphere, but even with that in mind, this is a setup. There are times, there are days where even though the conditions and the ingredients don't look overwhelming for that kind of thing, you can briefly, for a scan or two, get an issue out of that. And I'm hoping the National Weather Service office is in agreement with that, and perhaps we are getting toward the end of the line with this, with regard to the tornado warning perhaps getting a chance to expire. Let's throw the scope back on here. And, man, it's all good news. You know, the last thing I want is to be able to have this jumping off and for us to go, you know what, we've probably got a big bad tornado on the ground. I just don't see it. So what we're trying to avoid, what I'm looking for and thankful that we are not seeing, is what we call a couplet. So when you have a tornado that is on the ground, you're going to have this red color, which we see a lot of. You're also going to have a little pixel of green that will show up. And where those two touch are where your spin is most significant. We still have some spin here near Honeyway Falls that has probably now moved just to the east. So this is going to be near Tomlinson Corners, right over 64, and it will pass near or just south of Mendon. It will then head in the general vicinity of 444 from Victor toward East Bloomfield. And as we just plot this out in time as that new scan comes in, this will likely be right over 444 in about 5 minutes or so. I'm having a very tough time, though, finding something in there, finding the signature in there that justifies that we've likely got a tornado on the ground. I'm going to real quick here pull up the handy smartphone, and I've got a different vantage point from a different radar, and I want to make sure that these two are syncing up. This notion of what I'm seeing here and what we're seeing on this other radar, this all looks the same to me. The circulation is now broadened. It hasn't completely dissipated. It's certainly still there, but it is not quite as significant as it was earlier. Now, the way we treat this, because we still do have a tornado warning in effect, you still need to be paying attention to this to the tune of being in your safe place right now. Everybody who is within that polygon, and there's a decent amount of you, because they've drawn this out so far with it. We'll stop the motion here real quick. Let me go back and zoom this out so you can see all the towns that are and are not in the middle of this. But that's about it here. So we're getting toward the end of the line, hopefully, of this. And what I would love is for them to not reissue this to include Canandaigua, but it's going to be really, really close. And this may decide it wants to tighten back up again. And it may decide, hey, I want to produce a tornado now. That certainly happens. I've seen that happen multiple times before, so you don't want to let your guard down with this. But everybody from Victor, if you're on the east side of Honeyway Falls, you probably still need to wait for another couple of minutes before you go ahead and call it a night. But the back edge of this, certainly on the west side of Honeyway Falls, I think you are done with that. But I'm really more looking at folks in Canandaigua here, and I say that because you've already had some storm damage earlier today. We had trees down, we had power outages. In the overall direction that this storm is moving, you see it straddling near or just north of 20. It will continue in that general direction. So this would end up being another very close shave, another very close call for places like Canandaigua if this does, in fact, end up holding together long enough or sufficiently enough that they put another warning on it. And we'll plot it back out here. I've got this on a little bit of a slower mode, so a lot of these times I would add about 10 minutes onto them. It'll be faster by 10 minutes than what you see. So in Canandaigua, you would likely be looking at closer to about 7:45. So you've got maybe 20 to 30 minutes or so in Canandaigua to be able to have some eyes on this and to continue to watch this if you've got to go ahead and take action out of it. What I like seeing is the fact that this is getting deeper within the drawing of that polygon, and we have not seen any new updates with this until it looks like just now. There you go. How about that? So it's 7:18 now. Our friends at the National Weather Service have gone ahead and lifted our tornado warning. Our storm is still rotating, folks. It still has a little bit of spin with it. It has a history of some spin, and it's in an environment today that has produced damage. Now, what we're going to do out of this here, we're going to drop this and head back to regularly scheduled programming. But I want you to know a couple of things, especially if you're in Canandaigua, and I'm talking to you in particular for folks in Canandaigua, because I know we've got a lot of people that are down there right now. You still need to be watching this. At any point, you could have the reissuing of a warning, and it may be a tornado warning. I don't want you to stray far from where your safe place would be. Take the next 5 to 10 minutes and think about, make a mental note, if they do issue a warning, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? So in that moment, you don't waste precious time having to find out what that motive is going to be or what your next step is going to be. We'll cross our fingers that this is in the winding down phase of all of this, but we'll also still be here and be vigilant. If we have an additional tornado warning that is issued, we're going to jump right back on this. You'll see me again on air, like it or not. I know you're watching whatever we have airing right now, and you probably don't want to see this face instead of that. But we take these seriously. Tornado warnings are a very serious affair, and if we've got another one, we're going to be right back here. Hopefully we don't. We'll take you back now to regularly scheduled programming.